It's almost 30 years since unidentified flying objects were reported off the coast of Kaikoura, Christmas 1978. The sightings would have been marked soon with a commemorative flight, a gathering of enthusiasts, and even, believe it or not, a musical. At the time, news of the sightings was reported worldwide, and to this day they remain a huge source of conjecture. Here's Clayton Anderson.
Got a mile behind us. We've just heard from Wellington radar that we've got an object about a mile behind us and it's following us. Let's hope they're friendly.
It's one of New Zealand's biggest mysteries and one of the world's best documented sightings of a UFO.
The most important thing I think about this whole story is that even to this day, the flight crew and the air traffic controllers are adamant that we saw something highly unusual that can't be explained.
Quentin Fogarty was the reporter with a news crew that filmed the UFOs on an Argosy freight plane the night of December the 30th and early morning of the 31st, 1978. He wasn't expecting to see anything that night. He'd been asked to do a news story on a UFO sighting from 10 days before.
I was on holidays in New Zealand and my employers in Melbourne said, would you break your holidays and try and get on a plane and just basically do a reenactment.
John Cordy was the radar operator on the night of the first sightings on December the 20th.
We saw some little targets on our radar. We checked it out just down off Blenheim, Cape Campbell Way, and we joked actually. We said, oh, it's Father Christmas test driving in a sleigh with Rudolph in the front just before Christmas, you know.
Then the UFOs followed an Argosy freight plane.
This target then moved towards the Argosy, turned with it and parallel tracked it for a good 20 to 30 miles. The target and the aircraft were at 90 degrees to each other the whole time, and the aircraft, Vern Powell's airplane, said they could see a big red light that was definitely airborne.
This sighting caused a huge stir, and the story went around the world. Fogarty hired a freelance film crew in Wellington and interviewed the people involved in the first sightings. He then boarded a freight plane to film the flight from Blenheim to Christchurch.
I was in the bottom part of the aircraft in the cargo hold doing a piece to camera.
It's a beautiful clear night outside, and naturally we'll be looking out for anything unusual.
And the pilot put his head down and we were sort of flying over Cook Strait at this point and said, you guys better get up here.
Then the almost unbelievable happened. UFOs appeared in front of the aircraft and were confirmed by Wellington radar.
We have a couple right in front of us. Very, very bright. That was more of an orange, reddy light. It flashed on and then off again.
On the flight down, basically what we saw were just little pinpricks of light that would just turn into great globes of light. And they were obviously airborne and they were between us and the coast because we could see the coast and we could see the sea and we could see these things shining down.
Once they'd landed in Christchurch, cameraman David Crockett restocked with better film and they headed back to Blenheim.
It's really getting a bit frightening up here. There's a whole formation of unidentified flying objects behind us.
The lights followed them almost to Blenheim. One of the pilots that night was Captain Bill Startup.
What it was years ago, we don't know. And that's all it can be. I wish I knew.
Bill's wife Shirley remembers Bill arriving home with the film crew in the early hours of the morning.
When they arrived home, the air was absolutely electric. They were absolutely fizzing. So, of course, opened the cabinet and had a brandy.
The next day, Fogarty was on a plane to Melbourne with the film, and that night presented the news.
What you're about to see was not only witnessed by the 5 people in the cabin of the aircraft. It was monitored on radar and recorded, as you will see, on film.
Everyone had their theory about what it might have been.
We got all sorts of people ringing us up telling we were basically idiots and we were fooling the public, we were putting a hoax out, you know, this was all a big hoax for Christmas.
I became a little bit of an object of criticism, almost ridicule, because we were, you know, poo-pooed by the authorities and by skeptics came out of the woodwork and cherry-picked the things that suited them and dismissed all of the evidence and said we saw this, we saw that.
Others believed what they'd filmed were Venus, squid boat lights or the lights of Wellington in Christchurch.
Well, people can think about that, but they were not on the aircraft.
One psychiatrist thought that they had lost their faith in God and were seeing angels. And I mean, What is that?
None of those involved are satisfied with any of the explanations given by scientists and government officials.
They've said the visual sighting was squid boats, it was Venus, it was Jupiter, it was the harbour lights, you name it. They can come up with all sorts of reasons what it was. But they haven't explained why I can suddenly see Jupiter and Venus and the harbour lights and squid boats doing 140 knots on my radar.
The famous Argosy plane of that flight is now owned by filmmaker Paul Davidson. He's organised a 30th reunion event that runs over 3 days in Marlborough.
The whole Kaikoura UFO thing had a big impact on a small place, and it was a memorable event in many of those people's experiences.
Whatever you think, the Kaikoura sightings are now part of our folklore. Just what they are will probably always be in the eye of the beholder.